So it's just through the Open Orchard project, and working on a book for that as well. I know the whole history of grafting in New York City. So it started. It's believed that the first grafting in New York City took place in around 1730 at William Prince Nurseries. So that's Flushing, Queens. They were the Prince family was part of this Huguenot Huguenot community that moved to the area, and they wanted to replicate a lot of French varieties that they had grown back in France and were trying to introduce to the U.S. So it also turns out that they were the first real sort of commercial nursery in the United States, and so Flushing. So with grafting, what I'll do is I'll walk you through the various types of different grafting that I work on. The first one is called bench grafting. So bench grafting is you'll order your rootstock from a number of different places, as I mentioned. Raintree Nurseries out in Washington, Cummins Nurseries in Ithaca. And generally what I do is I'll order, the rootstock will come in sizes. So what I like to do is order 5/16 rootstock, anywhere from a quarter to 5/16. So generally what that is it's pencil width. And for my plum trees and apricots, I'll order a Myrobalan. It's a Prunus sericifera that is really well adapted to the clay soils that I have here. Works also really well down around New York City. For peaches, I'm worried about hardiness, so I use a Lovell peach. For plum stock and it apples, I still go with like old school, like M9 or M111 rootstock, but you can get them in various sizes. The apples tend to be more responsive to the different types of rootstock. So, again, you can get rootstock that is going to dwarf the tree significantly, or you can go with a standard size that will still give you a 40-foot, 50-foot tall tree if you want. So this is a cherry stock, and this is Gisela. And what I'm going to do is I was able to source a type of cherry that originated in New York City, which is called Dickman, and it came from there was an orchard. There was a family that they collected seeds off of a tree and planted them all out, and they developed a bunch of different varieties, and one of them it's still around today. All right, so before I get grafting, the big things to do are making sure that all of your tools are clean. This kind of builds off of the pest and disease management. So essentially viruses are only transferred to fruit trees through one of two means. One is through aphids. In the spring, certain aphids have wings and they can fly 2 to 3 miles. They'll preserve a virus in their beak. They'll take it from one tree to the next. The other way that you do it is through grafting material. So one of the things that I always do as I'm sourcing my rootstock and my scion wood is to make sure that they are all coming from reliable sources where I know the people. If I'm getting trees, I'm going to get them from a nursery that I trust. Box stores, I don't know where the trees are coming from. I don't know what they might have. So with rootstock, you can buy them certified, virus-free. And with scion wood, when you're sourcing that, that's a lot more difficult. But again, that's like get it from reliable sources, Raintree, Cummins, that sort of thing. So cleaning your tools, basically what you want to do with your pruners every year, spray them with WD-40, wipe them down or scrub off any sap that's left over from last year using steel wool. After that, what I'll do is I'll spray them with This is a 10% bleach solution that isn't working in this container right now. And then I'll let them sit for a little bit, but not too long. And then finally, what I'll use throughout the season to clean them is isopropyl alcohol. And I try to, between every cut that I make, I try to wipe down the pruners with alcohol. So I just keep a plastic bag with me at all times and wipe them down. And you want to be really careful as you go from tree to tree. Like, make sure that you're wiping down between each tree. So I think you can see here, there's different types of grafting knives that you can order. And they all have different functions, and we'll kind of talk about these as we go. One of the things that I found, though, like I do a lot of grafting, and I don't seem to be all that good at sharpening. So one of the things I found is I use these utility knives that where I can replace the blade. And one of the things that I like about that is that it's, with these knives, I find that they cut better after I've used them for a long time, and they start to dull out a little bit. But when it comes to utility knives, I like them really sharp. I can change the blades out quickly, and yeah, go from there. So with bench grafting, it's pretty simple. What you're going to do is you're going to take your stock material, try to find a spot on the branch where they're the same width or thickness, like that.
Hey, Sam.
Yeah.
Sam, for like the detailed demos that you're about to do, is there any way that we can move the camera a little bit closer?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm working on it. All right. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Let's see if I can. I don't think I can zoom in or anything. All right, we'll get. Try to go really close. All right. I think that's better. Oh, look at
that's
that.
great.
See all the tools. No kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And then if you're doing anything that's like super tiny, just hold it up to your camera if you can.
Yep.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Okay. So yeah, you kind of want to look for about the same thickness on it. And what I'm trying to do is match it up with the middle of this branch. You've stored them in the refrigerator. The tips or the ends might have started to get to freeze. So I'll work from the middle of this branch. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a diagonal cut. Oops. So I'm going to make a diagonal cut. That's a little too short, so I'm going to make that a little bit longer. Okay. Have a diagonal cut there. I'm going to try to line it up here on the branch in a good spot too. So I'm going to go right about here.
What's a good spot?
Somewhere where there aren't these little spurs, right? Or where they're, where it's clean, just clean, straight branch. So I'm going to try to match that cut. So really you want it to match in length like that. Okay, so this is the critical part. On the rootstock, when you get the rootstock, it's going to look something like this. It might be wrapped in sawdust, wet newspaper. So I'm going to come up 2/3 of the way, and I'm going to put a notch right here, like that. When I hold this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a notch 1/3 of the way up, like this. Then I'm going to take these two pieces, I'm going to slide them together like that. Okay, you guys see that?
Yeah, we could see it.
Okay.
That was really cool. That was so much that just happened so fast. You cut off the top of a tree, you made some notches, you tied them together.
Yeah.
You're about to tie them together, and now you have a brand new tree. What would you recommend for folks wanting to like practice that skill beforehand, before trying it on some rootstock that they just spent money on?
Hey, you got time right now? Go out, just get some branches off of trees. Doesn't really matter what it is. Sap's flowing in the trees right now, and they're really pliable, they're really flexible, and that's, just 1/4-inch size pieces, and you can just keep going. Okay, so a couple of things, like we should point this out. All right, this is where we get really, really close. All grafting is dependent on lining up the cambial layer on the tree, right? So this is the bark. We scrape this back a little bit, we get to that green inner bark. And right underneath that, there's a white band, which is the cambial layer of the tree, which is where all of the growth takes place within the tree. And with grafting, as long as you're lining up the cambial layer, you're set. So you can actually see this branch that I'm trying to graft onto here is actually a little bit smaller, right? So rather than just putting this branch in the center and having this gap on either side, what I'll do is I'll just nudge it off to the side a little bit so that that cambial layer is lining up. And then once I have that, then I use, this isn't even a product placement, I use Super 88 by Scotch. And it's just electrical tape. And what I'm going to do is I start down here, I use my forefinger to hold it, and then I'm just wrapping.
We had a question, which is what trees are you working with right now?
So this is Amberheart is the name of the cherry, and that's that one from New York City. And this is Gisela rootstock.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'll go up 1, 2, 3, a minimum of 4 growth buds. I'm going to take my pruners and go like this. Prune it off. And then with this pruning wax that I made this year, all I have to do with this is just dip the end in. The end's covered. I can heal these off, or I can pot them. So what healing off means is that, you know, I'm working on, like, I dig a trench in my yard, put it in, and I just use like potting soil and cover them. And that way I can cover, you know, if I do 200 of these grafts in a day, I can just cover the roots, keep them damp until I'm ready to either plant them or pot them. So if, you know, the varieties that I work with tend to be pretty rare, and I only will get like 1 or 2 branches. So one of the things that I've gotten into the habit of doing is I'll put one of these grafts, which is known as a whip and tongue graft. But I've had times when I planted these out and I've had a bird come and land on this and break off my top graft. So what I do is, like if I need it to take, I'll do another type of graft called budding. And this is traditionally only done during the summer months. Budding is the way that most peach trees are grafted. And so I'll come in and I'll put in it's called a chip bud. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and make a backward cut like that. I'm going to go up about 1 inch to 1.25 inches, and I'm going to come in and I'm just going to take off that section. Okay. So we can see, like, there's like green wood. This thing's starting to go. It's ready for spring. I'll take this, just a section, this tiny little growth bud from the upper part of that graft. And what I'm going to try to do is mimic that cut. So I'll go through, I'll make a backwards cut here. I'll go above it and I'll start to come back.
So right now what you're doing is you sliced a small bud off of one piece of scion wood, and now you're slicing a bud off of the piece that you want to graft it onto?
No, so what I did is I went into another piece of the rootstock that was bare, didn't have any bumps or anything like that. And then I went to a piece of the scion wood, collected that. So that was up here and I pruned it off. I had a little spot left. So I just took a growth bud off of it. So can you see? Oh.
Okay, so that way you get a branch of the type of cherry that you do want coming from the part of the trunk that's the scion wood.
Yep. And this is sort of backup, right? That's if this doesn't take. I've had problems where birds will hit this and break it off. Like most likely the graft it's going to take here start to become a new tree. But I started doing this as a backup a couple years ago for varieties that like rare varieties. If I'm trying to make sure that I get the graft, I'll do this as well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Two more follow-up questions. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between the two types of cherries and why you would want to graft onto rootstock? And then also, is there any worry of, are you trying to prevent the rootstock section from creating its own branches?
Yes. Yeah. So you're trying to keep the rootstock. Well, okay. So the reason why you want to use a rootstock to graft onto is that these, let's just take cherries for instance. Cherries are coming from all different places from around the world to here. And these varieties are really sensitive to the climate where they originated. So in order to replicate them and grow them in other locations, what we need to do is find or use a tree that's more adapted to the climate that we're in. And then we take that variety that we want to grow and graft it onto it. Throughout the whole life of this rootstock, we don't want to do anything other than just provide nutrients to this upper part of the graft that we're going to have grow. If it tries to, they call it suckering, right? And that's when you see a tree and it's got like other like trees that are trying to grow around it. We don't want it to sucker. We don't want it to grow. So, okay, my phone just said it was starting to die, so hopefully we'll make it through. Yeah, so we don't want any branches to come off of it other than the ones that we're grafting onto it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Sam.
Okay, good. Okay, so for doing bud grafts, what I'll do is I've taken this tiny little sliver off of this branch and I place it down here. And I've made that backward notch on that original cut and I slide this back into it. Right, see how that fits? Again, I'm lining them up together with the cambium layer and I'm using a material called parafilm. So parafilm is it's paraffin-based wax that's been turned into a tape. It's primarily used in the medical field, but it's been used a lot for grafting. So what I'll do is I'll have this original whip and tongue graft and I'll have a bud graft below it, and this is ready to be potted. I want to make sure that this graft is a minimum of 4 inches above the soil line. And I can just start potting the trees and going from there. Good?
Great.
Okay, cool. All right, so the other thing that I do is if I have trees left over from the previous year, I will, like if I have stuff that I haven't used before, I will start to graft those out. So again, this is, a Gisela cherry tree. You can see this is, that's pretty thick. That's like 3/8 of an inch thick. But again, what I'll do is I can just graft onto that as well. So I'll just do something like that, get the cut. And this variety is called Merton Heart. And so this is a variety that I just sourced that I've been wanting to grow. And again, I'm going to take that diagonal cut, all right, and try to match it. So this can use a little bit more. When you're making this cut, you want to try to get one clean cut. You don't want to be whittling away and getting something that's uneven. You just want to have, one clean cut. So again, for doing this type of graft, I'm going to go 1/3 of the way up and make a cut. Here, I go 2/3 of the way up. Go like that. And I have that notch that holds them together.
All right, I think we're losing you, Sam. The video just cut out.
Oh, it did? Okay. Give me 5 minutes and I'll get something worked out.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
No
Sorry.
problem.
All right.
In the meantime, folks, if you have additional questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And if we end up not having time for it on this session, then I'll make sure to ask Sam over email and we'll put together a list of answers for you guys. So I have been recording all of the sessions today and we'll be emailing those out to you so you can review. It's been so much information. We are so grateful for you, Sam.
Oh gosh, I hope it wasn't too much.
It's great.
Oh, we'll be back in a minute. I'm already plugging in an extension cord. So.
Okay.
Great. Okay. All right. Do we have video again?
We have video again. We're back. We couldn't quite see what you were doing at the top of the tree that you're working on because now it's too tall.
Oh. All right.
There we go.
Let's do that. I think that'll work.
Thanks, Sam.
Then we can see the other stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's do it again. All right. So yeah, these are rootstock that I'll grow out. So let's just say I ran out of scion wood to graft to them. I'll just put them in pots and save them for the next year when I do have the grafting material. And what I'll do is do that. You can also cut away like that. And let's see. Okay. So as you can see, like in a year, it's gotten a lot bigger. And what I'll do is I'm still going to want to graft to it. So I'm going to offset that graft.
When you're done with this one, can you bring all the pieces like very close to the camera just so folks can see the shape of the wood?
Oh, well, do that. So do you mean the cut? Is that what they're looking for?
Yeah, I think just so they can get a sense of like the angle that you're cutting at, what you mean by a third up.
All right.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna reach across. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is make two cuts that are approximately the same length. For here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go about 2/3 of the way up and put in that notch. Okay. Pull that back. Then on here, I'm gonna go 1/3 of the way up. Something really kind of important that's going to save you money in Band-Aids is that, say I have my two thumbs together. If I have my two thumbs together, I can't cut myself. Like I can't cut my thumb, which seems like, I don't know, I was doing a lot of before I kind of figured out that trick. So now that I have that notch there and this notch right here, I can just press these two together, right? And what I'm trying to do is line up. So there's the outer bark. If we scrape the outer bark, we can see the inner bark, which is going to show up as like green eventually if I keep doing this. Right there, that's like the inner bark is the green. But then right underneath that, there's this line, this white line that you can see, and that's the cambium layer. And that's the thing that you have to try to line up between the two branches. So as I slide these together, I'm setting this off to the side so that matches up. And then, sorry if you're seeing. So once I have that, then what I'll do is I'm going to take that electrical tape, I'm going to hold it, and I'm actually putting a lot of tension on this to get it to hold in place. At that point, what I'll do is I then just take the pruners, sorry, gotta run around. And I count up 4 growth buds. And here's another thing that I didn't talk about with pruning is always make your cuts at a diagonal so that water runs off. And that tree's ready to go. Got it?
Got it. That was amazing.
Okay.
Can you explain again why you have to cut off the top?
So like if I had 8 growth buds, this is gonna try to force growth up into all 8 of them. If I keep it limited to 4 of the best quality ones, I'm gonna have a better chance at them taking and setting and growing.
Thank you.
And probably I'll start to see growth from this in about, I don't know, 10 days to 2 weeks. Get going.
And then at what point would you take the tape off?
So the tape I never really take off. I wait until, so it's going to be tough to see, but back here on probably 3 tape starting to peel off, I'll wait until it's just like barely hanging, and then I'll just take it off. So the good thing about using the electrical tape is it doesn't need to be cut or removed at any point. It actually provides protection to the graft until the tree pushes it off, because it'll stretch and flow.
Cool. Thanks, Sam.
Cool.
So I think we have only about 5 or 10 minutes left. Is there anything you wanted to show, or should we open it up for Q&A?
Oh, I have a whole thing for like repairing girdled fruit trees, but that sounds like another workshop, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go on, and I think, I don't know, like we'll kind of see. That's one way of grafting. I don't know, probably 10 or 15 that I know of that we could workshop at some point.
Okay.
So
that sounds like a plan.
But yeah, so Q&A.
All right. Q&A. We have, can you review the timing on when to collect scion and when to do grafting?
You want to collect the scion wood when you prune. So that's January. And you want to do it when it's absolutely dormant. Which is another reason why I mean, if I had my druthers, I would prune in autumn, but you know, I have to collect all my scion wood when it's absolutely dormant. So that's January. I'll start to use that scion wood as the trees start to break dormancy. So I'm looking at this. This is an Asian plum variety. It's going to be the first one to start breaking dormancy in the spring. I can use it from any time the buds swell until, this is like another like orchard tale where they say you can graft until the leaves are the size of a mouse's ear, which I've always been like, what size is that? But generally what I do is like, I'll start to become hesitant about grafting. Then I can actually hold the scion wood for up to 6 months. So if I collect summer budding in mid-July through late August. So
great. And then someone has a 4-inch caliper dwarf cherry with high branches, and they want to make a couple of low branches from the same tree. How is that done? On the same tree, Penny, or from the same tree?
okay. I think you're gonna have to. It's gonna be more pruning than grafting. Like if it has like pretty high branches at this point, the only way I know that you can start to add more branches is to bring it back to the height that you want it at. Then it's going to start to grow, and you can kind of reshape and graft onto new wood. So basically, with grafting, what you want to do is graft onto the previous year's growth. You can get away with grafting on 2-year-old wood, but for the most part, what you want to do is see, like, this is all growth from last year, and so this is great grafting material. Whereas you can see that this is 2-3-year-old wood right here, which isn't going to be. I'm not going to be as successful with my grafts. Additionally, there is a way that you can add grafts down here, but that's a little bit more complicated than I could answer right now.
Okay. She says that the trunk hasn't given any low buds, so it sounds like there hasn't been any new growth that's like at a low level.
Yeah, I think that's more of a pruning issue. All right, I can show you, like, I can kind of talk you through this. I saw this once in California. It was like one of the kind of craziest things. If you take, so this is a flush cut saw, but it's got really fine teeth to it. You can take a cut here that goes 1/3 of the way into the tree. Then you make an angled cut that goes up, and you can insert branches into underneath the bark, which is actually, that's the only way I know of adding branches at a lower sort of thing, but maybe we can cover that in a different workshop. Other questions?
Yeah. No.
Oh, okay.
Penny, I just want to make sure we answered your question. And while Penny's answering, someone else has a question of if there are edible apple varieties that you can draft on to a crabapple tree.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because crabapple are primarily what, like, the first, those are the first rootstock varieties, and in fact, there's a lot of crabapple varieties that are still used today as rootstock for more edible apples. Yeah, that's a definite yes.
Are there any varieties in particular, or could that really just work with any type of apple they would want? Could it work for pears too, or are pears and apples different?
It can, well, you can't readily or reliably graft pears to apples. It's when you can go across varieties in stone fruit, so peaches, plums, apricots, nectarines, cherries, almonds, somewhat readily, but it doesn't, the same thing that applies for prunus doesn't necessarily apply to palm fruit. So with apples, you're kind of stuck with apples. Pears with pears.
Okay, thank you. Guys, we have 5 more minutes. Anyone have any more questions? All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining. This has been really cool.
I have one more thing to show.
Okay.
All right. So this is a cross section of a graft. I don't know. We'll get like really close. So right here was the original tree. Like, I don't know if you can see that in the texture of the wood. And then right here was like a tiny little graft that was placed on it, and then it became this tree.
Cool.
I don't know.
Did you
I
make
geek
that?
out about that. Yeah, yeah. And then here's another one that you can see more readily. So that line is where the graft was. So.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sam. We are all giving you rounds of applause from our self-isolation.
Wow, thank you guys. Yeah, thank you for being interested in this. It's cool. Thank you.